Welcome back to Refine the Fire. My name is Tracy Renee. I pray that you're all blessed on today. So I have another dream to share with you guys. I had this dream actually at the same time that I had the previous dream about the boardroom. This was in the same night. In this dream, I was walking this bike across a large city street. It looked like it was like downtown, like a downtown area of a city. And this bike was falling apart, let me tell you, okay? And there was some brown tape holding a part of it together. And it looked as if a section of this bike was missing. But I wasn't embarrassed. And I looked as if I couldn't be more content crossing the street with this mangled bicycle. While I was crossing the street, a black car turned right in front of me. This was a very expensive black car, and it seemed as if it was glistening. It was that clean and it was that shiny. I stopped walking to let this car pass, and then the driver rolled down the window, and I noticed it was a woman that I knew, and I happily greeted her and everything, and she did the same, and then she sped off, and she continued a conversation she was having with this man that was on the phone. And I knew she was on the phone because I could hear him talking, and they were like arguing and back and forth. And I knew she was in the car by herself. So I assumed she was on the phone, and she was in the middle of this like debate with this man. I'm not going to repeat the conversation, but it sounded like it was her boyfriend. It was it was a lot of drama, and they was just going back and forth. So I continued walking across the street, and then I went down a back alley to the back of what looked like a restaurant. So after that situation happened, I didn't stop. I didn't try to figure out what was going on with her. I kind of was like, wow, they're in a deep discussion. And I just kept moving forward. She cut me off. So once I got it, once she sped off, I was trying to hurry up and get across the street to get to where I needed to go. So I walked to the back of what looked like a restaurant. And I was looking around for a place to put this bike, and it kept toppling over. It was just falling apart. And I decided I was going to take the tape off and just separate the parts and kind of lay them on this bench that was there. And so I did that. And then a few minutes later, I went to a section behind the restaurant that had a table and chairs. And this was like a private area that was designated for the owners only. I don't know how I know that. It was separate from, it was like behind the restaurant, but it was kind of separate. You could tell people weren't allowed to come out there. And so I went over to the table. It was an older woman sitting at the table, and it was a little boy also sitting at the table. But there was a man about my age coming from inside of the restaurant. And I said to the little boy, as I was going to sit down at the table, I told him, I put your bike over there on the bench. And I was kind of hesitant to tell him about me taking off the tape and separating the parts. But he was so thrilled. He was so excited that I had took the bike with me to ride, or so he thought I was riding it, because we know I couldn't ride it because it was falling apart. But apparently he had made this bike. He made it himself. He had made it for me. It's almost like, how kids like make cards for their parents. It was something like that. He kind of put his heart into it. He made me this bike. He didn't care that I had took it apart. He was just overjoyed that I cared enough, and I was proud of him enough to take it out in public. And he came back to the table, and when he came back to the table, we all sat down to eat dinner as a family. Okay, we all sat down to eat dinner as a family. Okay, I'm going to go into the interpretation of this dream in just a minute. I've never said this before, but this has to be one of my favorite dreams that I've ever had. And not because the dream was so amazing, but the interpretation is. I don't know. I just love this interpretation. But God has been talking to me for quite some time about rebuilding. And the night before I had this dream, he had took me to a few different places in the Bible. I'll probably put it up, where he was teaching me about rebuilding in just different places in the Bible where they were rebuilding. And so when I had this dream, it was certain parts of the dream I didn't quite understand, but the one part I understood was the table, because we already talked about that, right? A previous video about the seat and the table. So I thought I knew where he was going. And then the fact that it was a family dinner at this table at this restaurant. So I kind of knew where God was going. But once again, I'm always depending on God to confirm the interpretation and also to back it up with scripture. Okay. So God gave me this title, and it was Divine Order of the Family Unit. He gave me a book. Sometimes he does that. He'll just tell me the book without any verses or anything. When he does that, I already know that means read the whole thing. So he gave me Nehemiah. This book of Nehemiah records the history of the return to Jerusalem after captivity and how the walls were rebuilt and the people were renewed in their faith. They're rebuilding the city walls. Okay, we know that walls signify structure. Also, it's what connects the ceiling, the floor, and the foundation of a building or home. And we also know that whenever God is talking about homes, for me anyway, whenever I have a dream and it's about houses or homes, I know he's talking about spiritual. He's talking about your spiritual home, your dwelling space. The Lord is rebuilding the structure of the family unit. I think I talked about this in the Kings video just recently, but again, he's rebuilding the structure of the family unit. And he started doing this work, he said, during the pandemonium of specific occurrences. And he says things aren't always what they seem. Even now, hear this, he's doing this work during the pandemonium of specific occurrences. That's why you got to reel it in. I know it's a lot going on that's fighting for our attention, and it gets you so distracted. But God is like, things aren't always what they seem. He's up to something. Y'all need to go and watch that Kings video. He's saying things aren't always what they seem. What looks shiny isn't always what's best. Okay, think about the dream, right? The shiny car that cut me off in the middle of the street. That thing may come with hell attached to it, the Lord says. But the thing that seems broken was created in love. A meticulous hand is building this thing from the ground up. Don't judge what's unfinished. God may be cooking something up behind the scenes. Can I tell y'all, I don't know, this is an old word, but God is so fly. He's just so cool with it. He said he may be cooking something up behind the scenes. He said he in the kitchen cooking up something real good for his children. He says some are turning the corner and getting off into discord and confusion, and some are moving straight ahead into their destiny and the plans and promises of the Almighty. The divine order of family, wholeness, security, and abundance. They are becoming entrepreneurs and owners, but it may not seem exciting and flashy on the front end, but on the back end is their reward. There will be joy unspeakable, and their lives will be crowned with God's glory. Things aren't always what they seem. He said the wall was finished. So in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15 to 16, we see how it says the wall was finished. It came to pass, and the enemies heard and they saw these things. They were vexed and realized what God said was accomplished. God says this is what was happening in the street when I saw this lady. God says he's going to allow this work that he's finished in you to be seen by those that spoke against it. And he's not doing it for you. He's doing it because his name is attached to it. His name is attached to this promise over your life. So it has to come to pass, and it has to be seen. They will see you blessed, and they will glorify your God in heaven because of it. We know the full work hasn't been finished, right? As long as we still on the earth. But there's a specific work, something that he's been trying to do in you. Something, you might have been deliverance. It might have been confidence. It may have been, that gift that he's trying to perfect. Is something in you he's been working at. And he says this specific thing right here is finished. And he says it has to be seen by those that spoke against it. He's going to allow this work that he's finished in you to be seen by those that spoke against it. And he's not doing it for you. He's doing it because his name is attached to this promise over your life. They will see you blessed, and they will glorify your God in heaven because of it. Oh my God, that word is so good. So good, because this dream wasn't going where you thought it was going, right? But things aren't always what they seem. And there's a knowing in me, like even in the dream, like I didn't feel embarrassed when this person pulled up. I didn't feel any type of way. It was almost like this knowing that I had a car. So it wasn't like it was anything exciting. The car, I was just describing it as being shiny and all of that. But in a dream, that didn't really like move me. I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel like this person had anything that I didn't have. Things aren't always what they seem. And sometimes people can see you and they think that they're seeing something, and God is just showing them a piece. They think they know, but they really don't know. He's just showing them just a tad bit. But he has to let them see something. So don't be surprised if you run into somebody. God says he has to set the table in the presence of. He has to do it that way. Okay. Because his name is attached. This isn't so you can boast. This isn't so you can rub it in their face. This isn't like, ooh, look at me. It's not about that. This is about their soul, actually, because people are going to see. People are in a season where they need to see something to believe. And so when they see that they spoke against something that they thought definitely wasn't never going to come to pass for you, and when it does, they're going to have to say, man, that had to be God. And so now they're going to believe and they're going to glorify your God because of that.